Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and I've been doing a daily countdown of my 366 favorite video games of all time. Coming in at number 5 is Mass Effect 3. This is the big finale to one of the biggest, most ambitious stories ever told in the industry. I'm not taking the time to rehash everything that happened in the first two games, so if you're unfamiliar or want a refresher, check the description below to find links to my videos on those. Seriously, if you don't know what's going on, you're gonna get pretty lost in this one. I'm also going to try to keep this one a bit shorter than those videos, which are some of the longest I've made. There's a few reasons for this, but the biggest appeal to me about Mass Effect 3 that puts it at the top of the series is how you can carry save files over from previous games, and it takes all of your choices into account. And given how Mass Effect 2 ends, you may or may not have a whole lot of friends left alive, so a lot of what I'd want to talk about just might be impossible for you anyways. That's not going to stop me from showing you a couple of my favorites though, but we've got to get there first. The game starts off some months after the events of Mass Effect 2. Commander Shepard has been grounded on Earth as he surrendered to the Alliance military after he broke basically every law imaginable by an Alliance soldier in his efforts to stop the Collectors. Most people would have probably gotten the death penalty or whatever the maximum punishment is available in the society of Earth in the 22nd century, but for his good deeds, Shepard was merely discharged and is now kept under constant surveillance on a military compound. But then, one day, the moment arrives when he is, in fact, desperately needed once again. The Reapers show up out of nowhere and start obliterating all of the defenses the Earth had set up, and they're coming straight for Shepard. The Alliance Military Council is all taken out in one fell swoop, and now it's up to Shepard and Anderson to rally the troops and figure out what our next moves are. Unfortunately, Anderson knows exactly what they need to be, and Shepard is not going to like it. The two of you start climbing through the wreckage of the building to head towards the rendezvous point, where you'll notably be joined by Kaidan Alenko, our old buddy who now hates us, and he's still holding quite the grudge against Shep for working with Cerberus. But for now, he's going to have to put that aside. The game jumps into combat pretty quick this time around, and the improvements are already apparent. It's mostly the same system as the last game, but I really like the refinements they made. For starters, your Omni tool now has a blade function, and when you melee enemies, if you do it while sprinting, or if you just hold the button down, you'll do a big, epic cutting motion kind of in slow-mo, and it's a lot of fun. In fact, there's an entire class for this if you want, and I'm thinking the next time I do a full playthrough of the trilogy, experimenting with new stuff rather than doing what I'm familiar with, I'm going to go full renegade and be a melee brawler in this sci-fi shooting game with spells. It should be a great time. Outside the melee differences, the other change is going back to a little closer to the Mass Effect 1 weapon system, but not quite so in-depth. You can collect different weapons to equip to your squad and unique stats and handling, plus upgrades you can drop into, like little slots. But interestingly, the more stuff you have someone carry, the slower their abilities recharge, so you can have a very unique balance to this, depending on how you want your Shepard to behave in combat. There's also different armor sets and stuff, and this is all great for customizing your loadout, but it's ultimately not that important. When you finally reach the Normandy, Anderson reinstates you, giving you the ship back, and tells Commander Shepard to do something he's never once done in his entire life. Run. Despite the protests, Shepard gets out of there alongside Kaidan and Joker, and as you fly away, you watch a child that Shepard had tried saving earlier die. And the whole tone and feeling here is that this war is going to be unwinnable, and you've got your biggest task yet ahead of you. And it probably is, so if you're going to have any chance of success, you can't do it alone. So you start heading out to the Citadel to recruit help, but you're stopped along the way by Admiral Hackett of the Alliance fleet when he contacts you and tells you to make a stop at Mars, because there's technology that's been recently unearthed there that may be the key to ending the Reaper threat. So, to the Red Planet we go. Joining you and Kaidan is a new squad member, an elite soldier named James Vega. He's kind of a meathead, but the more you learn about his backstory and the more you talk to him, he becomes pretty endearing. I started out kind of hating James. I thought he was annoying my first playthrough, but at this point, he's a welcomed addition to the franchise. Sometimes it's just nice to have a down-to-earth character without all of the baggage that normally comes along on this ship. Once you're on Mars, however, things are immediately off. You shouldn't have had hostiles here yet, but Cerberus is already there and causing a ton of problems. Right away, Kaidan starts grilling Shepard, asking if he knows anything about how Cerberus is already here and what they want on Mars. Of course, Shepard hasn't talked to anyone in Cerberus in months, and he's also been under constant surveillance, so when would he have even done that? Once inside the facility, you run into your old friend, and in this carried over save files case, lover, Dr. Liara Tassoni. She's been busy. I have an errata to declare on my Mass Effect 2 video, though it's a pretty small errata. In that, I mentioned that she is the Shadow Broker, the super insane, ludicrously powerful black market intelligence dealer. Well, at the time of Shepard meeting her in that game, that's not true yet. That kind of happens between games here, and I just kind of forgot.
You're too kind.
So, yeah. She killed the Shadow Broker, took over all of their business, and now she's the most connected individual in the galaxy. But importantly, not evil. So that's a plus. So what's she doing on Mars? Liara is, or rather was, leading this expedition through the Prothean archives that were found there like 30 years ago, digging and digging through information and relics for anything that can help against the looming Reaper threat now on our doorstep. And well, wouldn't you believe it, she found something. Blueprints for an absolutely massive weapon called the Crucible. In theory, this is something the Protheans had designed that would end the Reaper threat forever, but they just ran out of time before they could get it fully operational and lost the war. But us? We have a lot more time than the Protheans because they did all the heavy lifting of designing it, but that's still not a lot of time. The only way we can get this thing built is if we fast-track it with an unprecedented coalition of the greatest minds and resources of the galaxy, coupled with the most unified fighting force ever seen, in order to not only stall and buy enough time, but then also spearhead the attack to get the thing in position. It's a tall order, but it wouldn't be the first impossible thing that Commander Shepard has had to pull off. There's just one problem. The files are gone, and in fact they're actively disappearing, because someone is downloading them locally and deleting them as they go. You track down the person, an agent of Cerberus, who is crazy fast and way stronger than she looks. After a great chase sequence where you're running through corridors and vaulting over debris and dealing with dropships of Cerberus troops, look, I really want to point out here that every step of Mass Effect 3 is far more cinematic than any of the others, which I think is a good thing for this big climactic finale game. We shouldn't be doing anything especially slowly, and this game should get adrenaline going, and it does a great job of that. So once you catch up, it appears they're going to get away, but that's when James, who you sent back to guard your exit and the ship when you picked up Liara, comes to save the day, though he's a bit dumb about it, and rams the Cerberus shuttle with his own, wrecking hers and thankfully not destroying his. Not skill, pure luck. The Cerberus agent, however, isn't down for the count, and it turns out it's an artificial intelligence in a synthetic body and gets the jump on Caden. We're too slow to stop the assault on him, but do manage to take down the AI and bring its dead body on board, as well as haul Caden inside. We speed on our less than merry way to the Citadel and rush Caden to the hospital and then head towards the embassies to meet with Counselor Udina. Yeah, I didn't choose that prick, but Anderson's a bit predisposed, so Udina got his wish, and is Counselor after all. After briefly meeting with him to share your information about the Crucible and give an update about Earth, you need to meet with the Council to present the terrible news, but also reveal how you can save the day after all. And probably get to tell them I told you so, and that they all suck. Because hot damn do they all suck. It turns out Earth wasn't the only planet that was hit, though it was hit the hardest, and none of the other 3 council members are willing to cooperate to save really anybody other than themselves, and we're out of luck, and it's every man, Turian, Solarian, and Asari for themselves. Did I mention that they suck? However, they've reinstated you as a Spectre and are willing to dedicate resources so you can recruit individuals willing to help the Crucible and any other military force as you fly around the galaxy and save trillions of people single-handedly, so hooray? This does actually open up a ton of avenues for you to get help, though. It is helpful. And we can start right here on the Citadel. Checking out Caden, I found Dr. Chakwas, so she's back. That's good. And I found this plucky reporter that wants to give updates to the masses directly to create a call to action and push those in positions of political power, but done from our ship, and also to the greater masses to do what they can. Every little bit counts, and recruiting people or intervening in conversations to help settle disputes or such can actually cause more to join your cause and improve your odds down the stretch. It all adds up, but that's not where the big support is coming from. The Turian Counselor visits and explains that the Turians may be able to lend aid if we can gain the trust of the Primarch, their leader outside of the Citadel. So you hop back on the ship to get over there, but first, Shepard decides to get some shut-eye and has some terrible nightmares focused on the child he couldn't save on Earth. It's pretty rough, and that kid is going to haunt Shepard for a while. The Normandy is largely the same as in the last game, though there's definitely a lot of personnel changes and a few modifications made to the ship as well. Importantly, you have a nice big room for all of the people you're picking up for the cause, and you can talk to them there and check out all sorts of statistics for how you're doing as the game progresses. One of your newest non-combat crew members, however, is Samantha Traynor. The last game had Kelly Chambers as your communications assistant, and Sam is in that role now and works largely similar, giving you updates about which crew members want to talk to you, but she's actually also kind of the source of comedic relief on the ship, alongside Joker, of course, because she keeps putting her foot in her mouth anywhere she goes. Like when she didn't realize that Edie was an actual artificial intelligence and had talked about finding her voice rather sexy and attractive. We'll revisit that idea for Edie in a bit. I promise it gets a lot funnier. But once we've reached the Turian homeworld of Palavin, we discover that it's very besieged by Geth. They've already lost countless civilian lives, and major cities are engulfed in flames. But the base we're heading to isn't on the surface. It's on the moon. And the guy we want, he's very dead. We find the commanding general on the moon base, and he gives us the rundown, but in order to know who the new Primarch is that we need to recruit, we have to fix this communications tower. I send Liara up top to fix it, while James and I protect her. There's a lot of great combat moments like this that are far more objective-oriented with Mass Effect 3 than the others, and that's another small point in favor of the combat for this game. But with that fixed, we return to the General, who gives us the name of the new Primarch, but he's not sure where he is, other than somewhere on the moon. Thankfully, Garrus is back. He's helping the Turians as their resident Reaper expert because he fought a Reaper the one time, and the Collectors too, I guess. It's not a lot to go on, and it makes Garrus very uncomfortable being called an expert on it, leading his whole people. But along the way, we discover that there's a lot more Reaper shenanigans going on than we originally anticipated. Until now, we had pretty much just been fighting human husks, but now we're seeing different kinds of them, like those ones that look like Turians. Throughout the game, we see a lot of Reaper enemy variety, which is nice. It's very nice, because I definitely wasn't expecting it the first time I played the game. So we find our guy, we get him out. He's not willing to go without a compromise, however. After all, this dude is a soldier, like Shepard, and far from a politician. He can't just leave his men, leave his planet without getting something from us.
Negotiating for the Turian hierarchy?
Yes.
I've spent my whole life in the military. I'm no diplomat. I hate diplomats.
We promise that in exchange for his help, and as a prerequisite for getting the Turian fleet, we'll recruit the Krogans. This was an idea originally presented, but was deemed actually impossible, so don't waste our time. Basically, there was no way the Krogans would work with the Turians, who deployed the genophage on them, making them largely infertile, or the Salarians, who developed said genophage. This is where the game opens up a lot. We have free reign to recruit people to the cause in any order or method that we want. We can coerce people, we can bribe people, we can extort them, or we can appeal to their sense of empathy. No warm body, or sometimes even cold ones, willing to help should be turned away. Like how we're recruiting the warring gangs of Omega, which previously had tried to kill Garrus. Of course, there's a lot of favors being traded and cashed in, like we can recruit the Rachni to work on the Crucible because we saved the Rachni Queen back in the first game, or there's the constant influx of emails Shepard gets requesting aid, which often will then lead to more resources at our disposal. There's a lot to do in Mass Effect 3, and while it's great gameplay to do all of it, some things are far more important than others. Like this Krogan business. I'm going to skip a lot of the details here, but basically, there's a fertile Krogan capable of theoretical breeding, and she was studied to develop a cure for the genophage and even a building to disperse it. But the Salarian Special Tasks Group had sabotaged the building so it would destroy the cure instead. In fact, part of the Salarians' deal to cooperate with the Conduit Project was for you to ensure that the cure is not deployed, but convince the Krogan otherwise. I love Mordin Solus. I talked about before how he is my second favorite character in any video game ever, but he was adamant that his work to preserve the genophage was the right call for the sake of the galaxy. He insisted this many times over the course of this story. But now, his travels with Shepard and other things since then, he's come to realize that maybe his grand calculus of the universe was, in fact, incorrect. Mordin completes his character arc going up to the top of the burning building to fix everything and manually disperses the cure, saving the Krogan people at the expense of his own life.
Someone else might have gotten it wrong.
Warning, temperature malfunction detected. Warning, temperature malfunction detected.
Proud of his efforts, he begins to sing his scientist Salarian song to himself as he welcomes the end of his life.
Acceptable range. Dispersal commencing.
My center science studies range from urban to agrarian. I am every mile along.
Mordin isn't the only one of your friends that may die throughout this game either. In fact, most of them can if you don't do things just right. The first time I played through this, I had been pursuing a relationship with Tali, and when we went to recruit the Quarians, we ran into her there. The deal to save them is to wipe out the Geths, so the Quarians can retake their homeworld when everything is said and done. There's a Reaper commanding the Geth army, and through joint efforts of the Normandy, the Quarians, and the fully free-willed Geth that we recruited in the last game, Legion, we're able to defeat the Reaper. They're no longer a threat, but the Admiral of the Quarian fleet refuses to call off the attack, and they intend to wipe out every last Geth there. Seeing the Geth as a potentially strong ally in this war, I told Legion to upload his personal update that would give them total free will across the whole species, so we could sway them to fight on our side. Tali, however, predicts that this would cause them to defend themselves since the Quarians are already attacking, and wipe out the entirety of the Quarian migrant fleet, killing every single member of her species. I, in my hubris, ignored Tali's desperate pleas, thinking we could convince either side to retreat. Legion must perform a more brute force upload after there's an issue, and he effectively kills himself to push it through. As it turned out, I was wrong. Every last Quarian died in the space above their homeworld, and overcome with absolute grief, Tali removes the mask to her environment suit while standing on her home soil, the only planet in the galaxy that she can breathe fresh air, and throws herself off the cliff, killing herself. Quarians are now extinct. It's my fault. These are the kinds of decisions you can make time and time again in Mass Effect 3, and it's some difficult things, and plot armor exists for nobody. There's a lot more of this, but ultimately it will all depend on what you've done in the previous games and even what you've been up to in this game. You recruit more members to your team, you collect more people for the Crucible. For example, one of your other new team members, the one I really want to mention here, is Edie. Yes, Edie existed before for you as the artificial intelligence on the ship, but now she actually gained control of the body of the Cerberus AI that stole the data before, and so she's up and around, walking around the ship. She can go on missions, and it's so funny when it happens because every single person is like, oh man, look at her. Joker is gonna have a field day, and it's funny because like her and Joker started out as hating each other essentially. Well, Joker hated her. I don't know that she hated Joker, but then they grew to work together and cooperate, pilot AI, and now they're kind of falling in love. And Edie is the one that asks me as Shepard about how to start a romantic relationship, because that's something as an AI she doesn't really understand, and there's a lot of pretty funny stuff about this. And remember the thing I said earlier about Samantha finding Edie's voice attractive and how that would become even funnier? I mean, damn. But yeah, you clash with Reaper forces, you clash with Cerberus, you recruit your friends, you lose some too. On the Cerberus front, it turns out that the elusive man became indoctrinated by the Reapers himself and is consumed by his arrogance. If you've prepared enough, you can make it through the Reaper forces on Earth. You'll get there. You can crawl to the finish line to activate the Crucible. Alright, this is the elephant in the room. People hated the ending to this game. I mean, absolutely hated it. Basically, it turns out that the Crucible needed something called the Catalyst, and that was actually an artificial intelligence that created the Reapers in the first place. Of note, the Catalyst is appearing to Shepard in the image of the kid he saw die on Earth, so that's, I'm sure great for his stress in this moment. The Catalyst saw a pattern that as organics made synthetics, and synthetics improved, they would eventually revolt against their creators at such a large scale that it would wipe out absolutely all life in the galaxy. So the Reapers were an inelegant solution, wiping out the more advanced life every 50,000 years, but leaving the more primitive life around so that life in the galaxy could continue in perpetuity. Basically, as a reward for reaching it, the Catalyst gave you 3 options. One is destroy the Reapers, continue this cycle, and risk eventually all life in the galaxy just dying out. Second is control the Reapers and use them however you would see fit forever, getting to play God and deciding what lives and dies. And third is modifying the genetic makeup of the entire galaxy, making all organic life partially synthetic and all synthetic life partially organic, thus eliminating the Reapers and ending the cycle in a way that would make the potential threat the Catalyst identified unlikely to pass. People were really pissed that the end of these games that were built from the ground up of your choices mattering and influencing the results of what happens, not being really dedicated almost at all to the choices you had made. The public outcry was so bad, BioWare released an apology and then a free update to the game adding details to it. Was it kind of a disappointing conclusion? Yeah, I think it was. Personally, I think it wouldn't have been as big of a deal if they had just not given us a choice at all and just had the ending be dictated by all of the other things we did. But really, the end result was never the point here, and this is why, well, one of the reasons that I rank Mass Effect 3 above Mass Effect 2, even though they're very close in my rankings, it's like basically a tie, is that these games had always been about the journey to me, and the way you see the culmination of so many subplots and character arcs weave together in such a seamless way throughout like 99% of this game is astounding. And with events like Morden's death, Tali's death, so many more things, Garrus is terrific throughout the whole trilogy. There's lots of great story arcs that you get to see, and it's one of the greatest storytelling accomplishments ever made, resulting in being able to play this whole trilogy through dozens of times and finding something new and exciting every single time you do it. You can join me tomorrow as I talk about my 4th favorite game, where I've got some real daddy issues, but at least I'm good at sports.